Middle Podcast, the podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What is up, slackers, and welcome to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. So I am flying a little bit blind this evening. I am your host, Jason Eck, and I am having some major audio issues. So this evening, I'm actually recording using the default microphone on my MacBook, and I don't know if it's better, I don't know if it's worse, but I do know that my podcasting microphone interface is unfortunately kaput. I wanted to update it anyway. So I guess now's the time. Wasn't something I'd planned on doing, but certainly sometimes these things happen. So I just have to go with it and hope for the best. So I uploaded some content on the Instagram page today. I've been talking about doing some additional content for quite some time now, and head on over to Instagram. I realized I didn't actually put a thumbnail in, so I'm going to have to go back and edit it. Otherwise, it looks like I have posted a blank video, which is problematic. Okay, so let's jump into the topic for this evening. Ever listen to your kids talk? And they use all kinds of terminology. Kids say things like, "Oh, he ate that." That means they really did a good job at something. Or, "Oh, that slaps." And of course, there's, "Oh, that's lit." And all kinds of things that kids say. And it got me thinking about our own slang. So 70's and 80's, some of the 90's. And I don't know if you recall, but somewhere back in 1992, there was an article that was posted by Rolling Stone or New York Times, one of those. New York Times, okay? So New York Times has often been considered like the newspaper, right? So they're trying to figure out what the kids are going to say these days. So what they did, and this is the exact, how they described the news article. A journalist asking grunge musicians and enthusiasts about their own slang terms. Okay. So the person that they asked was this young lady by the name of Megan Jasper, who was 25 at the time, and she was working for Caroline Records. And she used to work for Sub Pop Records, right? So as you know, like Sub Pop was the label for grunge and pre-grunge and really the earliest days of emo as well. A lot of great bands that went through Sub Pop, some very well known. We can do a whole episode just on Sub Pop. Nevertheless, they were asking, hey, what are the kids saying these days? This new counterculture, this new grunge thing. What are some of the words that the kids are using? So this young lady, Megan, just started letting it fly. And I realized that a couple of these things did kind of make their way into the actual lexicon, although they started being completely made up by this young lady. So let's talk about bloated, or a big bag of bloatation. That means you're drunk. My favorite, I think, is number 2 here. Bound and hagged. Bound and hagged. That means you're staying home on a Friday or Saturday night. Sorry, I can't go anywhere on Friday. I'm bound and hagged. Now, I've never heard anyone actually say that, but it's amazing. We have cobnobbler, which sounds awfully similar to a rather vulgar phrase, and that is a loser. Now, you have a dish. Now, a dish is actually something that did become a term, and I actually think it was used probably in the 50s or 60s. In this particular case, they're saying it's a desirable guy, but a dish back in the day, I think, was a desirable gal. Fuzz. Now, I was asking my kids, actually my son and his girlfriend, if they could figure out what these phrases were. And when I said fuzz, they immediately went cops. I'm like, no, heavy wool sweaters. Heavy wool sweaters. Harsh realm. Harsh realm supposedly means bummer. Now, kickers, right? He says, oh, like shoes. Well, we talk about kicks being sneakers, right? But this is kickers meaning heavy boots. Lame stain. I will admit, lame stain kind of became a thing. In part, I think because of pro wrestlers Edge and Christian. I think they called people things like lame stains and called them another kind of stain. Anyway, stain, totally a thing. Plats, platform shoes, I think people probably did call that. Now, rock on, you probably remember in the 80s, there was that, actually it was a remake, wasn't it? Rock on. Remember that song? But this says rock on is a happy goodbye. That's so wrong. Score. Great. Now that did become a thing, but it was more like something good happened. Score. The best one though, that made like national news and legitimately parents are like, is that what kids say? Swinging on the flippity-flop, which is supposed to mean hanging out. It doesn't. Tom Tom Club. Now, which came first, the band or just calling them uncool outsiders? That seems like a bit of a slag of the Tom Tom Club. Obviously a spin-off of the Talking Heads. Whack slacks are your old ripped jeans. Mm-hmm. And then one that didn't make the article that Megan Jasper wished had made the list was tuna platter, which is supposed to mean a hot date. Oh, this Saturday night, I got a tuna platter. I don't know. I kind of like that one. But these are all, of course, made up. Many of them. And even though a couple made it into the lexicon. So what are the actual things? So I was going through different ones. So just here's another little sidebar in my research of slang terms. So you all remember MTV's Cribs, right? And Cribs is obviously someone's house. And someone was attributing this to being 70s slang. And I just don't remember that being a phrase until the 90s, with MTV Cribs and stuff like that. I'm going to head back to my crib. What's interesting is it actually comes from the 19th century. Okay. Well, actually, it does say that it showed up in Shakespeare. So in, what is it, Henry VI? And it says crib was used to mean a small dwelling, right? So when King Henry delivers the soliloquy about his subjects and expresses bewilderment, why rather sleep liest thou in smoky cribs, upon uneasy pallets stretching thee, and hushed with buzzing night flies to thy slumber, than in the perfumed chambers of the great. So smoky cribs meaning small houses. But in the 19th century was when cribs largely became known as a slang word used by thieves to refer to the homes or the shops they were planning to target, right? So the places that they were kind of, scoping out and sussing out, they called them cribs. Interesting, right? So what were some of the actual slang terms, right? Oh, they were casing the joint. They were casing those cribs. So this first list I found funny because it's trying to do a lot of things here. So this is 70s slang terms, right? And it says 15 funky, because of course it's going to be funky slang terms, right? So I haven't dug through each and every one of these to try and look at the etymology of the words and when they actually started, but you'll recognize many of these, if not all of them. So you have deep six, right? So that means something has been deep sixed, meaning you want to get rid of it. So apparently that started in the 1970s, in part through Watergate, right? And testimony that someone was asked to deep six. Space cadet. Now, I want to do all like these 70s ones with like my exaggerated Tommy Chong. It was like, oh, wow, man, that guy's a space cadet. So space cadet, once a literal term for a person engaged in actual space travel, gave way to someone who was neurologically affected by excessive drug use and detached from reality. That's a nice way of talking about someone who's stoned all the time. Right? That's all there is to it. And supposedly it was also used as the title of a 1948 novel. But hey, it was set in 1975. It was a futuristic tale. This is a great one because I think it's still in use. Well, I know that it's in use. It's just part of our language now. And that's guilt trip. And apparently this came from 1972's Any Minute I Can Split, a novel by Judith Rosner, when a character says, "Nobody's sending me on any guilt trip over money." And thus a phrase was born. Now, supposedly it had been used earlier in the 70s via a quote by Bernadine Dorn of the Weather Underground. And of course, the Weather Underground always makes me think of that nice little line that they put in Rage Against the Machine. Gotta keep it together, man, like the mother effing weatherman. Okay. Number 4. This is still used, but tongue-in-cheek, because people don't really have them anymore. And when you see one driving down the road, I have some mixed memories about these things. And of course, we're talking about the shaggin' wagon. For van aficionados, it gave way to vehicles that were tricked out. Oh, they were. Like I've mentioned my dad's van about going to the drive-in theater. He didn't have the mural though. So they were most, popularized by side murals, furnishings, and basically pseudo living spaces. Absolutely. The back was extremely comfortable, and in part because all those people were space cadets. Now, I'm sure this one's been around way longer, but I guess it became very popular with CB radios, right? CB radio was every place, like everyone had one, and 10-4, which is just a way to kind of respond saying, "Hey, do you copy?" "Yeah, 10-4, good buddy." Interesting, but nothing groundbreaking here. The term couch potato started in the 70s. It was coined in 1976, and it's related to another TV-related slur. A TV-related slur. Boob tuber. "Oh, gotta go watch the boob tube. Ya couch potato." Number 7. Jive turkey, which makes me think of Barbara Billingsley. Obviously, she was Mrs. Cleaver, but she was also in Airplane, and she speaks fluent jive, of course. Burnout started in the 70s. Now, this says 1940s. A burnout was like the literal meaning, right? So when an engine gave way on a jet. But in the 70s, it was a burnout, someone who did too many drugs. And honestly, burnout, draggers, like all those kind of things were kind of used somewhat interchangeably at different points, but definitely burnout was one that I was familiar with, even into the 80s and 90s. This one, I don't know. You tell me, early Xers. Primo. Did they use primo that much in the 70s? In the market for something first class and excellent, then you want some primo product. Oh, now I hear it. Yeah, primo product. Usually about street drugs, particularly marijuana. Oh, I got some primo weed, man. Number 10. Lame-o. Ah, you big lame-o. Or a dweeb. And it got some public airtime during a 1977 episode of Saturday Night Live. Oh, lame-o. Oh, boy. This one was definitely 1960s. Now, I know it was late 60s, but Keep on Truckin', that came from artist R. Crumb. And, that Keep on Truckin' was used a lot with like the Grateful Dead and stuff like that. Tidy-whities became a slang term in 1978, according to this one entomologist. Tidy-whities. Oh boy, and speaking of tidy-whities, a wedgie became a thing in 1970. So of course, you have to have different bullying tactics for each generation, and certainly the wedgie, along with the wet willy and the swirly, were definitely part of the 70s and 80s lingo. An airhead, that was a foolish, unintelligent, or frivolous person. Ah, airhead. And of course, this one is still around and used because there's no other way to call it anything else. And that is a whippet. And for those of you who don't know what a whippet is, that is not the dog that we're talking about. It is inhaling nitrous oxide. And that is called a whippet. But it says here, cleverly enough, it's a pretty surefire way to arrive at Space Cadet and burnout territory. Facts. Facts. Now, facts. When did that start? 2000s, right? But yeah, 1970 slang terms are interesting, to say the very least. But that brings us to the 80s. And what I'm surprised by are a couple of terms that were missing. And I think because they're almost so mundane that people don't remember it becoming kind of a big deal. But we'll go through the list first, and I'm going to point out a couple of what I believe to be glaring omissions from phrases that we used back at that time. So number one, so now we move away from Tommy Chong and more into like Bill and Ted speak, right? And number one, bodacious, right? So according to Green's Dictionary, this word is actually a blend of bold and audacious, right? Meaning excellent, wonderful, and very enjoyable, and was coined in the 19th century, but found new life in the 1970s thanks to CB radio. But then in 1989, it was featured heavily in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Bodacious. I didn't know that this started then because I think it's just always been around. But big whoop. What, man? Ah, big whoop. It's funny to me because it seems so mundane at this point. But that would have been a new thing. But big whoop-de-doop-de was one. That was like another version of it. Hella. Now, is that 80s? You know, I guess so. I think that Hetfield was the one who kind of was using it a lot. So that is 80s. Yeah. Hella, man. And there's, in the early 2000s, Hella Good by No Doubt. Now, this is a curious one. One thing we do know for sure is that it made its debut in print in 1982's Valley Girl's Guide to Life. Buff. Buff. To get buff. Well, dudes have got to be like totally buff first off, before you can even talk to them. Right? All I can think of is the wrestler, Buff Bagwell. He's buff and he's the stuff. Next up, we have gnarly. So, 1970s surfing term that meant dangerous and challenging, but then it kind of changed, right? And it went from going from like disapproval, meaning like bizarre or frightening, to something that's wonderful and really top notch, right? So that was, in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, something gnarly. It was good. Now, even in today's parlance, though, so surfers, skaters, etc., will use gnarly to be like, oh, that was a gnarly spill I took, right? Or that was a gnarly wave, or whatever it is. So it can mean both gnarly injuries or bad injuries. Of course, a gnarly injury could also be a gnarly injury, if you know what I mean. Number 7, 8, and 9 on this list. Gazillionaire, bazillionaire, and buttload. A gazillionaire has a buttload of money. So I couldn't resist. I went to a wedding last weekend. It was my aunt's wedding. And my kid's sister was there. We were having a conversation, and it turned to someone that they know who is Brazilian. The person wasn't there, but, so I said to my sister, because I couldn't help myself. I go, so what's the population of Brazil? And she says some like reasonable number, like 68 million or something. I'm like, no, it's a Brazilian. Everyone laughed despite themselves because you can't help it. I'm sorry. That's a great joke. Duh. 1980s, duh, definitely started. Started then, and that means stupid. Here's a little trivia point. I had a cat named Duh. Duh was the kind of ostracized runt of the litter. Cross-eyed, kind of sickly. I was probably the worst person to take care of this poor thing, honestly. But yeah, it was no other name for it. It was Duh. And it was kind of like a shared cat with like this girlfriend at the time. So of course, those things never end well. But yes, I had a cat named Duh. So that's very 80s and subsequently 90s. I don't think this came from the 80s. Foodie? I thought all like the IEs, like the foodie stuff, all that terminology. I just think of it so much as a social media thing, but I guess it did come out earlier than that. It says that the term won out somewhere in New York Magazine in 1980, and someone was a foodie. It's interesting. I don't know. I'm not sure I buy that. Oh, totally tubular. Right? So Valley Girl by Frank Zappa, right? With Moon Unit Zappa, who's not a space cadet. But it's so awesome. It's like tubular, But it began its life in the 1680s as a word meaning having the form of a tube or pipe. But in the 80s, it took on new meaning entirely related to waves, right? So again, surfing language looked like a tube. It was tubular. Makes perfect sense. But it also shows kind of the cleverness on language that even in slang, like, is this something that you would necessarily immediately think of with surfers? And maybe the word just came out of someone's ass and they just said it one day. Oh, tubular. Look at that. It looks like a tube. That's totally tubular. But then to have it actually be a real word with, a Latin root, it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Eat My Shorts. Of course, you have Breakfast Club and then Bart Simpson. I had a t-shirt, Eat My Shorts. I had one that said, Don't Have a Cow, Man. Yeah. Radical, or as I think most of us would use, radical was definitely used by some people. They use the whole thing. I'm definitely of the rad generation where it's just rad, right? So there's that BMX movie, 1986, with the pre-prison Aunt Becky, Lori Loughlin. She's in BMX. Actually, hold on a second. I find it really curious. Let me glance here. I honestly hope that the microphone is picking up all of this because it'll be a bummer if I get through all of it and don't have anything recorded. Wow. I guess that's it. Because this article talks about Lori Loughlin and Talia Shire, right? So Adrian. But yeah, the rest of the cast is pretty unremarkable. Okay. Moving on. Take a chill pill, man. Take a chill pill, dude. And that's obviously telling them to relax. This came in college campuses in the 80s. Chill, bro. Take a chill pill. Wastoid. Wastoid's a good one. Definitely a John Hughes phrase. Listen up for when Andrew tells Bender, Yo, Wastoid, you're not going to blaze up in here. Oh, Emilio Estevez. Go and check out the Brat Pack episode if you haven't already done so. You can find that on Spreaker, iTunes, anywhere else you get your podcast or you listen to this. Check that one out if you haven't already. Gag me with a spoon, which is always the first one that my kids like to say. Oh, you guys used to say, gag me with a spoon. Now, I don't know if I ever said that seriously. I really doubt that I ever used that phrase at all, for real. But my wife insists that she and her sisters, now mind you, they're from the Midwest, used to say, gag me. I mean, I guess. The expression of disgust dating back to 1982 apparently had other forms as well, such as gag me with a blow dryer, a snow shovel, a phone book. I know for me, and I've gotten in trouble by my dear wife because I have let fly the phrase, and it's not quite as nice as gag me with a spoon. So here's my one F-bomb for the night. Fuck me gently with a chainsaw, Heather. You of course know what that one's from. That's of course from Heather's. Butt face. That started in I'm surprised that one, didn't that one start in like Canterbury Tales though, honestly? Like 1600s, 1500s, something like that. I'm not sure I'm buying that came from the 80s. Ralph for vomiting. Totally. Definitely. For sure. Oh yeah, this is very clever. Adios amoebas. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. Bod as short for body. Oh, nice bod. Grody. Oh yeah, grody to the max, dude. Definitely grody was used. Not for long though, at least not in my neck of the woods, but it was used a little bit. Freakazoid, kind of like wastoid. This one says that it's more specific to like punk rockers at the time, like new wavers, punk rockers, probably goths, and oh, hey, freakazoid. Oh, here's Heather's, which is motor. Great pate, but I got a motor if I want to be ready for that party tonight. What's the other one? Okay, I got a motor if I want to get ready for that funeral. Someone tell me why I smoke these damn things. 'Cause you're an idiot. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, I have heard the full phrase, smooth like butter, but I never heard anyone just say butter. That's butter. Never heard that. Right? But this says it was slang for anything that was particularly uncool. Oh, that's butter? As in that's bad? Weird. I don't know. I never heard that one. Veg or veg out. Definitely. Kind of goes right along with the 1970s couch potato. This says here, the past tense of the word can be found in the Totally True Diaries of an 80s roller queen, which featured real diary entries from between 1983 and 1988. Today I went to Tracy's to pick up my guitar and stuff, and then I went home and vegged out. All right, and then finally on this list, we have wannabe. And this is great because it says that it started in 76, but really took off in the 80s. And in 1986, the Washington Post described a character in a play as a morbid Madonna wannabe fascinated with tabloid tales of bizarre deaths. So, okay, wannabe. I think many of us will think of the Spice Girls, if you want to be. But I noticed a glaring omission or two. So first of all, I know that I said it, and it was definitely early 80s. And I just did the rap video, last, the rap podcast last week. And that's fresh. Like, I'm blown away that fresh isn't on this list, because that was something that was said for at least a period of time. Awesome. Now, here's the thing. I remember saying awesome for the first time, like around my grandfather. And for my grandfather, he was born in the 30s. And his whole mindset was awesome was reserved for God, right? Something that was awesome. Not just as, haphazard and offhanded as something would be awesome. But I feel like awesome as just a day-to-day term was very much an 80s thing. Oh, totally awesome, man. Right? Then there's things like Bogart. Don't Bogart it. Apparently that was also a 70s term. So Bogart is meaning to take something from someone. That's always a good one. Beef. Beef had a couple of different meanings, but like beef and boof. beef was usually to pass gas. A boof was kind of at least from where I was, a sexual activity to be boofed. Trying to think what else. I was still blown away by the few that were missing. But yeah, I mean, there are some things that were just universal, like just cool. Cool is just kind of always a thing. I remember people going, oh, things were mint. Yo, that's mint. Actually, let's take a look real quick. I'm just curious. Here we go. Okay. Let's go to some 90s slang. Let's go through some 90s slang to kind of round out the decades that I consider to be part of Gen X. All right. Yeah. Okay. 110%. It's the amount you gave when you were giving your best, right? And it's a logical impossibility, of course. And it's the premise of a joke on The Simpsons. But by 1998, it was still so popular that it landed on Lake Superior State University's annual banished words list. Now people very often will say 100%, 100%, instead of like absolutely or definitely. Bada bing. Bada bing. Now this is, I don't know, you got a picture of The Sopranos, but I'm pretty sure that bada bing came before that. Bada bing, bada boom, right? Yeah, it was definitely before The Sopranos. Like, I want to say, didn't Tony Danza say that? Um, didn't it? I really could have sworn that came way earlier than that. Um, yeah, it just seems like the bada being. That's what they call it here. Yeah, James Caan. Oh, good grief. James Caan, Godfather. Bada bing. All right, that took care of that. Okay, a buzzkill. It wasn't in the Scrabble dictionary until 2014, but it's defined as the one that has a depressing or negative effect, buzzkill, otherwise known as Debbie Downer. Harsh. That was harsh, Ty. That's from our good friends over at Clueless, the late great Brittany Murphy. Um, she was Ty, by the way, who called Cher a virgin who can't drive, and then Cher shoots back. That was way harsh, Ty. Um, Jiggy, of course, Will Smith getting jiggy with it. Na 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 na. Judgy, judgy, dopey, so judgy. And it's saying that it's strange because one of the most judgy people on earth, Judge Judy, um, I don't know how they're making that kind of comparison other than the fact that she's a judge. I don't know. It's so strange. Um, Metrosexual. Now this says this came out 1994 was the first time that that term was used. I definitely feel as though it was much more regularly used in the parlance in the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, Majorly, that's also from Clueless. Um, let's see. Okay. Noob. Yeah, noob is definitely about the internet. You're such a noob. Why do they have what? Skeezy, right? I've heard the term. That's another one that would have been in the 90s, late 80s too. Sketchy. If someone's sketchy, or someone's jazzy, or someone's foxy. See, these are terms that should have also been on the list, but skeezy was supposedly used to describe Freddie Mercury's pants. I don't know. Snarky. Now, snarky has been around for a century, but according to the dictionary, the noun snark, meaning an attitude or expression of mocking irreverence and sarcasm, didn't appear until 1999. Spousal unit. Oh, shut up. Is that kind of like conscious decoupling? Oh, gosh. Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin. They're just the freaking worst. Worst. Talk to the hand, because the face ain't listening. Now, where did that first come? Did that first start to... Now, this is saying it first popped up University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So I'm curious to know if either Damon Wayans or... oh my gosh, I've said his name on the show before. Greer. Anthony Patrick Greer. Oh my gosh. Oh boy. Can't find it. What is his name? Oh my gosh, it's going to bother me so much right now. Almost there. Hold on. David Allen Greer. Why did I think Anthony Greer? And David Allen Greer was just on, that show with, was it Donald Lowe, and Steve Carell about the serial killer? Really interesting show. If you haven't seen it, I would check it out. But I thought they did that on In Living Color. Like 2 snaps up. Verklempt! I'm feeling a bit verklempt. Linda Richmond, of course, from Saturday Night Live, played by Mike Myers. Bling. Okay, when did bling first get used? Bling bling. Let's see here. So this is BG and the Cash Money Crew coined the phrase bling. Yada 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 is of course from Seinfeld, which is an old-timey way to make a long story short. Yada yada yada. What's the deal with airplane peanuts? Booyah. Now, I always thought, so this is saying that it's coming from Stuart Scott, ESPN, but I thought it came from Booyah Tribe, because I thought Booyah Tribe came first, way before that. Let's see, what year did Booyah Tribe start? $1989. Yeah, pretty sure they came before that phrase was used. Booyah Tribe became popular after touring in Japan in the mid-1980s, where they were initially known as the Blue City Crew. Yeah, Booyah Tribe. Got to keep it low. Chillax. I feel like that came before. They're saying Pulp Fiction. Gastropub. Shut up. The term aptly describes an eatery combining frou-frou food with scuffed-up neighborhood feel. So the gastronomy and the pub, you get a gastropub. Infobon, used to describe the internet. No. Not. So they're saying that this was a Wayne's World skit. No. Not, in my opinion, comes from Anthrax and Not Man. Not. Pomo? What is Pomo? Cute sounding rhyming compound, shorthand for postmodernism. Postmodernism is POMO. Stop yourself. Regift, regifter, regifted. It was 1995 that the term found popularity thanks to an episode of Seinfeld. However, its first recorded use as a noun was 400 years ago during the reign of Elizabeth I. Here we have score again. So which one was it? 80s or 90s? Score. You get something good. Cool. Oh, so like I said, this came from that list and became real. Oh, amazing. Amazing. And then, of course, if you are from Massachusetts, you have to know that wicked is not just some random new slang that was coined by Good Will Hunting. It's actually a phrase that's used here. That's why we have pizza places like Wicked Cheesy. And that's why we have a cornhole manufacturer in my hometown, which is Wicked Cornhole. Wicked. Everything here. But I've never actually heard, and because I think it's outdated, I've never heard anyone say Wicked Pizza. I've never heard it. But I'm sure people use it somewhere. So anyway, slang terms. I mean, I don't know. What did I miss? What are some of the ones that you would think, oh, no, we said this, or, no one said that in the 70s. No, I don't remember. Just let me know, because I'm really curious, because language is kind of fascinating and how slang even develops. Now, I was saying to my kids the other day that I do think that the number of words, the amount of slang that comes out of hip hop, which admittedly I'm a hip hop fan, but sometimes some of the language is just stupid, right? So for example, one of the new ones is Riz. Oh, he's got the Riz. That means charisma. Now, mind you, it's no different than anything else, but I'm like, how did that come to be? Oh, he's got the Riz. I mean, it's funny, but at the same time, like, oh gosh, it's really all just shorthand. That's why it's slang. Take a word, find a piece of it, take a root of it, you make something else out of it. Charisma, Riz. Oh, Riz. And it becomes a thing, which is fine. That's how language develops and evolves. I just feel like much of the slang is coming out of the hip hop world more than anything else. Lit certainly came from there. I'm not sure where 8 came from. It's kind of funny though. Anyway, what did I miss? Let me know. So also, please check out the Instagram, and I am going to be posting more regularly, and you'll have to check it out for yourself, kind of what I'm working on. So, hey, reach out to me. How can you do that? You can email me at stuckinthemiddle, a Gen X podcast. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at StuckPodX. You can head on over to the Facebook page, Stuck in the Middle, a Gen X podcast, the page. You can like, share, comment, leave 5-star reviews, and most importantly, please subscribe to the podcast. So until next time, later, slackers.